goes 2-0 this week with 2 double-digit victories over Rider and Stony Brook. Welcome in, everybody, to the Scarlet Shootaround podcast. My name is Blake, here with co-host Mike, ready to dive into what we just saw this past week. Mike, how you doing today?
Good to be back, first off. I know you kind of had to handle things on your own. I was away on a little trip to the Windy City, little engagement ring shopping.
Whoa,
actually.
he goes live with it. He goes live with it, ladies and
exciting. No, it was exciting. It's a good trip. Glad to be back, though. Glad to talk about Nebraska basketball. Got some dental work done today, so I'm feeling teeth are feeling a little weird maybe, but doesn't prevent my ability to talk.
So those on YouTube getting a nice little view of the freshly minted teeth here. But be warned, I think we had 1, maybe 2 female viewers. He is now off the market, folks. Off the market.
Well, have been for a while, but officially.
Officially now. Love it. So let's get into this. Nebraska goes ahead and beats Rider 64-50, a pretty ugly game in general. Defense kind of took the center stage there. Nebraska has a tough shooting night, but as Fred quoted, which we'll get into, defense has to be the constant on this team. Mast goes for 12, 13, and 2, has another double-double over his 27 minutes. Wilcher comes off the bench and plays a great game, has 13 points, 5 rebounds, and 1 assist, and really kept them afloat in the first half. And he proved that he could come off the bench and be a weapon for us. Alec goes for 10 and 6 and proves again that he's an energetic rebounder who can get some offensive boards and happen to have 4 this game. Tominaga goes for 7 points on 3 of 13 shooting in his return to the floor. Not an efficient start, probably not what anybody imagined, but I think in watching the game, you can kind of see a little bit of him pressing, trying to find those shots, get the crowd excited a little bit. So maybe a little bit of nerves on that side of things, but as we'll talk about coming up as well, Stony Brook, he righting the ship quite a bit. So, and then Bryce Williams goes for 7 and 8 on 1 of 6 shooting, a little bit inefficient, but made a lot of his free throws. So kind of saved his stat line on that side of it and crashed the glass well. Mike, what do you take from that game?
Yeah, like you said, it was a pretty ugly game. Maybe I know at one point I tweeted that was the worst 4 minutes of basketball I'd ever watched. I think at the start of the second half, we had 2 misses and 4 turnovers in our first 6 possessions. So it was a rough start. But yeah, defense came out and balled out. I know it got a little tight there in the second half. At one point it was a 1-point lead, 47-46, but then the Huskers went on a 17-4 run to finish the game, actually a 17-0 run, and then a couple garbage time buckets by Rider to get a couple points there. So good to see the defense step up. Win your clunkers. I know it's something that we say a lot, maybe not on the podcast yet. I'm sure you'll hear it plenty of times now, but win your clunkers. If you're not shooting well, you can always play well on the defensive end, as we alluded to Fred talking about.
Well, the biggest thing, as I told the guys, the message in the locker room was every night has to be our defense has to be our constant, and we've talked about that all year. There's going to be nights where the ball does not go in the hoop, like tonight, and you have to be able to continue to guard on that other end. You can't drop your head. You can't feel sorry for yourself. You got to keep going out there and defending at a high level, and that's exactly what our guys did. I believe it was 9 minutes where we held them without a point.
So again, the defense shined tonight. I'm not sure that we fully expected this to be a defensive-based team. We know last year Fred designed a game plan that was focused on defense and worked with Walker kind of running the point with Tominaga's electric February. But this team has proven that it can play defense as well. Held them to 30% shooting from the field on 17 of 56, 24% from 3 on 6 of 25. The defense showed up tonight. And Rider, maybe not carrying the name weight, Mike, but this is a really good veteran team. They're preseason favorites for their conference in the MAAC, the MAAC, whatever you may want to call it. Yeah. And they came with energy, but we battled adversity when it wasn't going in.
Yeah, like you said, veteran squad. They know, what college basketball is all about. I think a thing that stood out to me is we were plus 13 in rebounding. Rider last year was 37th in rebounding margin. So well-coached team, they crashed the boards well, but to see us get double-digit rebounding margin, I think that's big. I think that speaks to our front court, which maybe coming into the season was kind of a question mark. I know it was for me. Didn't know how, Mast would transfer over, how his skills would, but I think our front court between him and Alec's always bringing that energy. I think they're kind of a strength of the team that I've seen for the first 3 games here.
It's very interesting, too. Again, we always talk about it. We'll say it every single time we go live, but the depth on this team allows for so many different lineups. We can go small. We can go big. If we get Mast, Gary, and Alec all in the game, you can get some really strong rebounding in there. So come Big Ten play, I feel really good about how we might match up with a lot of these teams.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, depth. We got 3 guys in double digits again. I mean, 26 bench points out of the 64 total. It's scoring can come from anyone on this team to give you good minutes, and I think that's, like you said, important when it comes to conference play.
And I want to touch really quick too on Wiltshire. This is a dude that probably isn't going to start much this year, playing in Tominaga's shadow a little bit. We've seen Lawrence step back in his scoring a little bit, but you just never know with how deep this team is who's going to be the hero on any given night. And it could be on offense or defense, right? Tonight or not tonight, but for the Rider game, we saw that, the defense had to show up tonight. Shots weren't falling, and our scoring hero was CJ Wiltshire. I mean, that's not to say that he wasn't able to do it, but who saw that coming?
Right. Especially coming in the season, I think eyes were Bryce Williams, plenty of other people maybe you're looking at to score, Boogie Coleman maybe perhaps, but yeah, not seeing Wiltshire necessarily be the guy to buoy the team, but it's glad to see that he can do that. And I know there were a couple times there he drove in, made a tough layup. That's something we didn't see a lot last year. I feel like tough finishes in contact and more of a spot up shooter. And obviously he made his threes this game too, but good to see a little bit of versatility in his game now.
Only thing we're really waiting on, and this will transfer into the Stony Brook conversation as well, is we had 13 assists and 11 turnovers. So Huskers really have got to figure out this turnover problem. A lot of it starting at the point guard spot. We don't have a true bona fide point guard in this team. The only issue, Aaron Eulis may have potentially fit that bill. We learned again that he's not going to be eligible this year. So Lawrence is going to have to develop.
At bottom line, yeah, it's a problem. Turnovers, you got to take care of the ball. And I know I've been harping on it a lot. Missed layups, got to make the easy ones. So those are the two things I'm looking forward to see if they can improve going forward here, Oregon State, and looking forward to conference play.
So we beat Rider 64-50, sets us up very well for a Cornhusker Classic victory here, beating a tough opponent. So
you would hope so.
64-50 win for the Huskers, and then they came back Wednesday and took on Stony Brook. Mike, you want to break down that game a little bit?
Yeah, Stony Brook ended up being an 84-63 win, 21-point win. Stony Brook, maybe once again not the highest quality opponent, but some big notes. Williams Williams had 17 points, 9 boards, 4 assists on 6 of 9 shooting. He talked maybe wasn't so efficient against Rider. Very efficient game against Stony Brook. I think the big note here is Jordan Gary coming back. He didn't get the start, came in off the bench, had 23 minutes. He went 8 for 11 shooting, 19.7 boards, no assists, but I think, Fred was happy to see him back, and I think the team's happy to have him back, yeah.
Hoiberg very excited to start getting his weapons back available on this team. He had a quote on Gary's return.
Yeah, it's great to have Juwan back on the floor. He just brings so much. He has every intangible that you can bring to a team when he goes on the floor. And, it's good to see him make those couple that really helped us extend the lead. But he did what he always does. He got extra possessions for us, rebounded the ball well, defended at a high level. He can guard multiple positions. He can really guard 1 through 5. So it's great to have him back. Got a full roster, pretty much right now, with the exception of a couple guys. But, Juwan back on the court makes a big difference for our team.
And Gary, while maybe not going to be a huge scoring threat or maybe the best rebounder on the team necessarily, he is the biggest addition that this team could have asked for going forward, because Alec, while he's a good player and can get done what he needs to do, Gary's a whole different animal down there.
Yeah, different beast. I think Fred alluded to it. Can guard 1 through 5 in this game. He actually did at one point guard 1 through 5 every point in the game. Very impressive. That's just more credence to our defense that we're preaching. Held Stony Brook to 37.9% shooting. That's all 4 games now. They've held their opponent under 40% shooting. Kind of like what we talked about with the Rider game. We didn't necessarily see this as like a defense first team, but it's kind of looking that way right now.
Yeah, and all the metrics show that our defense adjusted efficiency is actually higher than our offensive adjusted efficiency. So not something that you would probably normally picture out of a Fred Hoiberg team, but I think we're seeing that again. The culture from last year of a defense first mentality might be flooding over to this team.
And I'm not going to complain about it. I think it's a good approach. I think, I've always told growing up, from my basketball coaches that even if your shots aren't falling, defense is like 95% effort. It's you lock in, you bring your most when you can, when you're on that side of the court. And there's just really no excuse not to bring it there.
So Tominaga has a much better game against Stony Brook, goes for 16, 3, and 4, got a little bit back to his old ways. Didn't necessarily force quite as many shots. You could feel he's a little bit looser for the Stony Brook game. Had a lot of great backdoor cuts to the hoop, and we saw Mast give him a couple assists off from the top of the key. So you'd love to see that, remnants of Derek Walker a little bit. Went 2 of 6 from 3, 7-11 from the field, so played a really good game. Mass goes for 14, 8, and 5. So again, we're seeing those assist numbers go up with Mass, with Tobinaga's reemergence on this team. He's just such a multi-dimensional threat, and he's even probably surpassing my preseason expectations.
No, very much so. I have it here in my takeaways. I think Mass's ability to just stretch the defense is so important. He was, like you said, 2 for 4 on threes. He's shooting 31.3% on the season. Maybe isn't great, but for a big guy shooting 30%, I mean, you got to respect that. And being able to stretch out that defense, that opens up, like you said, those backdoor cuts. You don't have to worry so much about getting blocked if you're a guard, getting into the paint while Mass is out there on the floor, which is huge.
And not just Mass, but Gary hit 2 threes last night too.
Right.
So you're talking about 3-point threats all over the floor. A huge, awesome, amazing development for this team. Lawrence goes for 8, 5, and 4. Had the highest plus minus on the team with 31. So still had a couple turnovers. Still going to be a little bit of an issue, but you can kind of see him rounding into form a little bit as these games keep going.
Yeah, and I think he will eventually get into that as he gets more minutes as the primary ball handler. He's only going to learn trial by fire a little bit maybe, but I think we'll see that improvement. It's good to see him be leading the team in plus minus, like you said. Having those 4 assists is big, but the 3 turnovers, work on it a bit. As a team, we had 19 assists and 14 turnovers, which not exactly the ratio you want, but I mean, it got it done against Stony Brook. Like you had alluded to, seeing that lineup of Lawrence, Tominaga, Williams, Alec, and Mast, seeing those assist numbers go up, it's really promising.
And I think we can pretty much see now that Fred is finding that starting lineup. I think that lineup of Lawrence, Tominaga, Williams, Gary, and Mast is probably going to be our set lineup going forward. They seem to have a lot of chemistry. You saw Fred play those guys for an extended amount of time late in that Stony Brook game, even though it was probably out of reach at that point. I think they all were on the floor together for about 6 or 7 minutes in the late second half. So I think he finally kind of hit him over the head. It's like, these are my guys. He saw the flow. He saw the chemistry. Again, as you pointed out, the assist numbers go up. So I think you just kind of let him play. At that point, you just kind of see what happens. And I think a result of that, unfortunately, I think Boogie and Eli Rice might seem to be the odd men out of the rotation. But those guys will move to depth roles. The good news is those are some of the best depth pieces you're probably going to find in the Big Ten.
Yeah, no, I'd love to see Eli Rice get more minutes, but obviously with the lineup we have, I think he's going to have to earn them. And at this point, I don't know if he has necessarily. I do love his new hair that he came out with.
I noticed that as well.
I just wanted to mention that. But yeah, like you said, it's not bad to have that depth. We're going to harp on it again, but it's not bad to have that depth. It's just it's going to come into play off nights when you're not shooting well. I mean, we had 29 bench points against Stony Brook here. I mean, obviously our leading scorer came off the bench again. I don't expect that to happen every night, but it's good to see that happen. So
a lot of versatility out there. The Huskers end up shooting 55% from the field on 33 of 60. Only shot 45% in the first half and only 17.6% from 3 in the first half as well. So again, tough offensive stretch in the first half, but rounded out in the second half, and the defense kept us alive in the first half again.
Yeah, the one stat that worries me here is shooting 58% from the free throw line. I know against Rider we shot above 70, but it's just a thorn in our side. I feel like it has been for the longest time, not being able to get those free points, make your free throws at the line. And hopefully it doesn't come back to bite us down the stretch with, we got a lead and a team's trying to extend the game. Got to be able to make them, got to have it. So hopefully that's something they can figure out, work on it in the Hendricks, and maybe we'll see it in come game time.
And I tweeted this live during the game, Scarlet Shoot Pod on Twitter. At what point is enough data points to see that we have a free throw shooting problem? I think this is 3 of the last 4 where we haven't broken the 70% barrier. It hasn't bothered us yet, right? We've played 3 to 4 teams that are all 200 Ken Palmer worse, so not an issue yet. But when you get into the Big Ten and you get into the Illinois, the Indianas, the Michigan States, the Purdue's, you cannot give up those points.
No, you need to have them. And obviously when we have our first, I don't know if you want to call it real test here, but a first bigger test in Oregon State, would love to see that improve. Obviously it's not going to be at home. It's going to be at the Pentagon in Sioux Falls, but we'll see how the boys adjust to that.
As Mike alluded to, next game heading down to the Pentagon, or heading up, I guess, in all geographical technicalities. Heading up to the Pentagon in Sioux Falls, taking on Oregon State, a 3-0 team. Had a couple tight overtime wins. This team, you don't want to say it's battle-tested, but it's most definitely overtime-tested, Mike.
Yeah, 3-0, a win's a win, but to double overtime against Troy in their second game, a 1-point win at home, and then another OT game at home against App State. Those are, Troy's 222 in KenPom and App State's 178. So not the highest quality opponents to be forced into OT, but like you said, battle tested. They've seen some. I know it's coach speak. You saw some adversity, so we'll see. We'll see what they bring to Sioux Falls.
KenPom checking in Oregon State, 174th on the overall ratings that he has, 209th in offense and 140th in defense. Tempo, they play at the 337th fastest pace in the country, so this team draws out possessions, doesn't really push the floor a whole lot. And I found that they are 27th in defensive steals and 318th in offensive steals. So they take care of the ball and they force a couple steals.
Yeah, and maybe after the last couple of games, that might be a bit of a worry for us, seeing that turnover bug pop up. But if the Skurs take care of the ball, I think they got a pretty good chance to take care of this one.
So starting five projected for Oregon State, I have written down, you may differ a little bit. Point guard Christian Wright, a 6'3 junior, averaging 9-2 and 2 on the season. He's shown that he's a little bit turnover prone, averaging about 3 turnovers a game. So hopefully we have some opportunities there on the defensive end. Shooting guard Jordan Pope, a 6'2 sophomore who's averaging 19, 4, and 3, seems to be their go-to guy on offense. Really leading the pack, shooting 43% from 3 and 48% from the field. This is the guy that's dangerous. You're going to have to watch out for him.
Yeah, dude's a flamethrower. He gets out, he gets an open look, he's going to hurt you. Not only that, shooting 100% from the free throw line, so you can't just hack him and hope he doesn't earn it. He's gonna convert, and like you said, averaging 19 points per game. He's obviously they've had some longer games, so the points per game might go up a bit, but the dude's for real. Yeah.
Starting at the 3 spot, I have it projected to be Dexter Akano, a 6'5 senior, averaging 14, 4, and 2. He's only shooting 27% from the field. It's not necessarily a huge offensive threat, but a senior that I'm sure provides a lot of leadership for them. At the 4 spot, I have Tyler Bilodeau. I'm going to shoot to Bilodeau. You're the pronunciation.
Yeah, I got the French.
A 6'10 sophomore, averaging 6'5 and 0. He splits time at the 5 spot. Another guy on their team that's turnover prone,
right.
3.3 turnovers per game. And they have a 6th man that they'll rotate in with their 5th man, Casey Ebekwe and Thomas Ndong, both 6'10", taller guys, both averaging about 5 points and 5 rebounds a game. Not really sure how they'll distribute that playing time, but those two will see the floor.
Yeah, I know in their last start, actually, someone you didn't mention is Chol Marial. He's a 7'2 center. So you're talking about bigger guys. This is a big guy. He's averaging 0.7 points per game, so he's not going to fill up the bucket. He's only got 3 rebounds in his last game, but he's going to be a rim protector. He's a 7'2". It's tough to get around. I don't care if Mast is pulling that guy out. With a wingspan and a height like that, it's pretty good for the defense. So
this seems to be a defensive first team. They're 77th in effective field goal percentage on defense and 57th in turnover percentage on defense. So again, a team that's going to cause a lot of problems on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe not going to shoot the lights out of the building. Again, in that double overtime win, I believe they had 81 points.
Yep, 81 points in double OT. Yep.
So again, this is a team that's going to try to force you to play in the half court. They're going to try to minimize our fast break points as much as they can. I'll be interested to see how our 3-pointers are going to shoot over their guards, mostly smaller guys against 6'2", 6'3", 6'5". So should have a little bit of a height advantage there. And I'd like to see how if Fred's going to run out this big lineup against these guys.
Yeah, I'd like to see him kind of attack with the front court. Like I said, I think it's kind of the strong suit of our team. So getting, maybe even a real big lineup, maybe a Gary Alec Mast lineup, kind of try to take advantage of that size difference, but we'll see. I mean, I think my key of the game is they better key in on Jordan Pope. I know we talked about his scoring, but just the tale of what he's done here in these double OT games. He's making free throws to push him to OT. He's making, an and one to push him to OT, to double OT. It's incredible. The dude's clutch. So I think that's my key to the game, is just how they come about on defense for that. I guess do you have any idea who you think you're going to guard? I'm sure probably not Casey. You think it's going to be Lawrence having the responsibility there?
The nice thing about having the lineup that we do and having 7 guys that could potentially, get into double figures on this team, potentially 8, is that any guy that they decide to focus on, there'll be another guy open, right? So, they might decide to double mask. They might decide to chase him off the 3-point line. Well, there's going to be opportunities for other guys out there. You look at a guy like Bryce Williams, you probably foresee him having a pretty good game. He's probably looking at a 6'5" guy guarding him potentially, so should have a little bit of a height advantage.
Right.
This Oregon State team is a heavy 3-point shooting team with a lot of 3-point threats. So having this height advantage is going to help us a lot. They're 57th in 3-point distribution percentage out of all their points, so they look for the 3 ball a lot.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's something the Huskers can use as a little preview to Creighton, after this. Don't look forward. We're not looking forward yet. Let's not have a little letdown here after we're trying to look forward to the big in-state game. But that's the type of team that we're talking about here. Big focus on shots beyond the arc. So take care of business here and maybe learn a couple things about this team and see how we can carry that forward.
Ken Palm has this projected to a 73-64 win, projected to 71-62 win on Bart Torvik. So that would venture to guess that Nebraska will be about a 9-point favorite, Mike. You laying the points?
They play so slow is the only worry I have. Like we mentioned, 338 out of 362 teams in D1 basketball. So, and I think Huskers are middle of the pack at like 130 something. So that's my one worry about that is maybe it's too slow and we don't get a chance to score enough points to make up that difference. But being the homer I am, I'm going to lay the points.
I'm going to actually go the other way. I think I'm going to take the points with Oregon State for the sole fact that being a defensive first team that Oregon State is, we seem to not be able to put together a full game of shooting. It's either the second half we shoot well, the first half we shoot well. So for whatever reason, our scoring seems to just kind of disappear at times. I'm going to take the points just on that fact alone, as well as the fact that they might get a little bit hot from three. I still project probably Nebraska by 5 or 6 point win, but I am going to take the points.
Well, I hope not, because my fingernails and my heart wouldn't enjoy a 5 or 6 point win. I'd much rather a double-digit victory, but we'll see.
Moving on here. So a little bracketology update for you. I know it may be November, but when it fits the narrative, I'm going to share the bracketology updates. So just a couple metrics where we're checking in at. We are 44th in the net rankings, 52nd in ESPN BPI, 55th in KenPom. Bart Torvik has us as the 43rd team in the country, team rankings as 62nd. Now, the exciting parts here. Bart Torvik in his ranketology gives us a 59% chance of a tournament berth. Mike, what do you think about that?
Over 50% chance.
You can flip a coin and odds are you're going.
That's incredible. I know I said it last time I was on the podcast before my little hiatus, but I think it might be a little too early to draw conclusions 4 games in, but if it fits the narrative, it's exciting to talk about. I love to hear it.
The team rankings website, just to temper expectations a little bit, has us at a 14.4% chance of a berth. So probably more fitting your narrative.
Yeah, that seems a little more realistic to me. That seems a little more realistic, but we'll see. Yeah.
ESPN gives us a 7.6% chance of getting into the round of 32. So you'd venture to guess that's probably about 15% chance of getting in the dance. And the bracket matrix still has us in 3 of 44 brackets that they list. So what do you think, Mike? I mean, it looks good for now, right?
Yeah, no, it does. And they've done what they're supposed to do, is beat up on these, not so great teams. I think the Huskers are 4-0 for the first time since the 2018-2019 season. So they've taken care of business, and excited to see what it can do. The big one for me there is the ESPN one, talking about getting to the round of 32.
That implies a win.
Because getting to the tournament is exciting, but no longer having the cloud over this program of being the only major conference school without a tournament win. If we could eliminate that, I would be ecstatic. So we'll see what the year brings. I love the bracketology update in mid-November. I hope it sticks around. I hope we can keep updating it and we don't have to shy away from this part.
And it keeps going the right direction.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not, mid-January and we're hearing, 0% chance, because that would be real sad.
So Mike, I got a couple questions for you.
Yeah.
So, we've kind of talked about some of the guys that have come back on this team, Gary, coming back, Tominaga coming back. Who has impressed you the most on this team, and who's disappointed you the most on this team so far?
I think most impressive to me, honestly, has been Mast. I think I may have underestimated what he brings to the team. I know, he can stretch the floor. I knew that coming in. He's got a shot. But it's beyond that, because when he gets in the paint, he actually has a pretty diverse set of moves he can use in the paint. He can score inside or out, which I think just opens up a lot of things for everybody else. I think it was end of the first half for Stony Brook. We drew up a play, and everyone's keying Tominaga, and it ends up being a pick and pop for Mast, and he hits the three. I think that's, the more guys you have that ability, the better it is for everybody. And I think I've just been really impressed by him. I know I was kind of down on his rebounding after the first game. He got a couple poked away, but I'll happily eat crow. He's been much better than I thought he would be. A couple double-doubles. I had asked you if he's going to have 3 in the season. I think the last episode I was on, and he's got 2 of them already. So I'm thoroughly impressed by what I've seen from Mass.
And I tend to side right with you. Mass has been unbelievable. And now we're starting to see in the Stony Brook game that he has the ability to pass the ball as well. On the 5 assists, this guy might, I don't want to go too crazy here, but I don't see why this guy, if we have a good season, couldn't be an all Big Ten honoree.
Yeah. And having said that, I do want to ask you a question now. I know, do a little buy or sell for you real quick. Are you buying or selling that 2 Huskers can earn all conference honors? I'll include honorable mentions to that. So first team, second team, third team, honorable mention. Do you think we can get 2 guys into that?
Well, let's see. So you're talking about 3 to potentially 4 candidates. I would honestly right now, I think Mass will get there at some form or fashion, even if it's third team. I think he's too valuable all over the court, can stretch the court as well with some 3-pointers. And again, if he keeps these assist numbers coming, this guy's he's a hell of a player. You're looking at Tominaga, right? Can he keep his shooting going? Can he be efficient? There's not going to be as many shots, I don't think, in this offense now with the multiple offensive threats that we have as opposed to last year. So can he shoot at an efficient enough clip to average 16, 17 a game, in which case, if he does, I'm sure he'll be on an all Big Ten team. Past that, can Bryce Matthews get enough share of the pie to get in there? Can he rebound well enough? If Lawrence gets it going, I can see if he gets some assist numbers up there, lowers the turnovers a little bit, and maybe he's an honorable mention type of guy. There's some potential. I'll buy 2. I don't think I can buy 3 though. I think you get a little bit crazy at that point. Do we get a first teamer? I don't know that we have a true game changer to be a first teamer. That's where I'll draw the line.
That's a tough ask as a first teamer. I'd agree with you on that. I think that definitely we have the talent. I think the first 2 you mentioned there between Mass and Tominaga to be second team. I do think, like as you'd mentioned, Bryce Williams, and I want to see, more Gary. I think he looked really good shooting and slashing in on the defense. And I think if he carries that forward, maybe he has a shot to.
So with kind of the emergence of what we feel is the top 5 or 6 or 7, that Fred's trotting out there, who do you think is going to suffer from a drop in minutes?
I think it'll probably be Boogie Coleman first, which is tough to say because I love what he brings to the team. I he's had some great assists. But right now I just haven't seen enough from him personally. Having said that, I think right now it's probably Wilcher Hoiberg first 2 off the bench, but I see no reason that, Hoiberg and Coleman can't switch in those positions, anything like that. Eli Rice probably isn't going to get to see a lot of minutes, I don't imagine, which is a shame, but he's a freshman. It's tough to play a Big Ten ball when you're a freshman, so I don't find that too surprising. But yeah, I think, we have the 5 starters figured out, and then the next 3 is kind of pick your poison maybe. But I think Wilcher might be the 6th man, as we mentioned earlier.
So I'm just going to throw this out there because I want to figure out where you fall on the spectrum. Is it crazy to say that we could be a top 6 team in the Big Ten at this juncture?
I don't think it's crazy from what we've seen, from around the Big Ten. Michigan State's 1-2. One of the losses was to Duke, but they're 1-2. No, I don't think it's necessarily crazy. I personally loved what I've seen. I think they're playing, it's Big Ten ball, but great at rebounding margin. The defense is there. I think that lends well to how this conference typically plays basketball. And if they can continue to do that, I don't see a reason why they couldn't. Once again, I'm still probably in that 10-8 range, but I could see them getting up to 6 if the season goes well. Yeah.
Now, with the weak start to the Big Ten non-conference slate around the country, does 6th place get us in? It should.
Yeah,
right?
I would say
should.
So. Yeah.
Right?
I personally, I would say so. I think it'd be tough to keep out a team that finished the 6th in a major conference like the Big Ten.
We've seen it before.
It's happened before.
I hate to say.
Knock on wood.
We've been the victim of this more than a couple times now.
No, knock on wood. But, here's the problem is if Nebraska's 6th, they go, damn, the Big Ten must really be down. Yeah,
Nebraska's up there. This conference sucks.
No, that's the real problem, I think. But, no, I think 6 is definitely good enough to get in. I was talking earlier, 8th is probably good enough possibly for a bid. So I think if we finish 6, I would see that. I know it's tough with the weak non-con so far around the conference, but I'm not too necessarily worried about 6th place missing out.
So on that note, let's kind of slowly mosey in here to the Big Ten roundup. Got a lot of big teams in action here. Unfortunately, probably not a lot of good updates for you. The number 80 team in Ken Palm, UAB, beats Maryland in the Charleston Classic 66-63. This was UAB's first win. Jameer Young goes for 14, 6, and 6. Hardest and Scott go for 13 apiece. And they missed a three-pointer at the buzzer, so a tough loss and start the season for Maryland.
That's crazy. I'd never in 1,000 years thought that'd be a result, but here we are, and I guess that's, beauty of March, but it's November. So
moving on down the line, the Indiana Hoosiers beat the 325th ranked Ken Palm team Army 72-64. They only led by 1 point at halftime. Ware Johnson and Renault score 53 of their 72 points, so it doesn't look like they have a whole lot of scoring distribution down there at Assembly Hall. Army is not good. Mike, Army is not a good team, and they were tied with 3.5 minutes left.
Army's not a great team. I wouldn't be too worried. It's early season. They'll get things figured out, I'd imagine.
Purdue gets a really nice win, beating the number 38 ranked Ken Palm team Xavier 83-71. Zach Eady, the beast that he is, goes for 28 and 11. This is a good win for the Boilers. Purdue is easily the class of the Big Ten.
Yeah, I see no reason why they wouldn't be, the number one team going into conference play here, thinking that they're probably gonna, not run the table as in undefeated, but run the table as in being the class of the Big Ten. Yeah.
Michigan defeats the number 76th ranked Ken Palm team St. John's 89-73 in a really nice win for the Wolverines. McDaniel goes off for 26, 6, and 7, an all Big Ten caliber line right there. Burnett goes for 21, 3, and 2. Michigan seems to be for real for what we've seen so far.
Yeah, no, that's a big win, as you had mentioned. I don't know if St. John, how they're looking in the Big East necessarily, but that's a quality win for sure.
Illinois loses a really tough game at home to number 9 ranked Marquette in Ken Palm 71-64. Shannon Jr. goes for 21, 2, and 2. It was close, but Marquette pulled away late there. So Illinois showed that they can fight at home. A ranked team, and the coaches pulled themselves, but couldn't get it done against Marquette. And in the Hitler versus Stalin match that I did have on, which I want to note, and I tweeted this as well, there was a Husker fan in the crowd at this Iowa-Creighton game that chanted "Go Big Red" during a free throw. I've never been so happy in my life to know that they're out there. They're out there.
We're everywhere.
I mean, I would be miserable at that game. I'd probably have to wear like purple or something.
Certified hate bull.
I mean, I couldn't do it. But Iowa falls, the lesser of the two evils. Iowa falls 84-92 to the 11th ranked Creighton Blue Jay squad. Cricky goes for 24 and 5. Perkins for 16, 6, and 3. Iowa shoots 43% from 3, but same story as always with Fran's team. They can't defend a lick.
I would venture to say if we shot that well from 3, we're going to beat Creighton, because I think we can defend a lick. So we'll see what happens. It's maybe that's the formula. You got to shoot well from beyond the arc.
As you mentioned, Michigan State loses to the number 12th ranked Ken Palm team Duke 74-65. Walker goes for 22 points. Hall goes for 18. They fell behind in the first half, Mike. They just couldn't catch up to Duke.
Yeah, I mean, Duke's a good squad. I'm not taking too much from that. That's if we want to talk about bracketology, I think Duke's got a chance to go pretty deep, as they do every year. So not too worried if you're a Spartans fan, if you ask me.
Wisconsin continues a tough start to the season, losing 72-59 to the 47th ranked team in Ken Palm. Store goes for 22. Wisconsin only has 6 assists in this loss.
Yeah, that's a brutal stat line. 6 assists. That's
not sharing the ball.
It's a lot of ISO ball. And I think, especially in maybe you can get away with that in the NBA, but I think in college basketball, you got to be a little more team centric passing the ball. So that's tough. Tough to see Wisconsin off to a tough start, but I guess, as long as Huskers can't handle business, it's not the end of the world for us.
Good for the Big Ten. Good for Nebraska's prospects, right? Yeah. Northwestern, we just praised them last week for a good win against Dayton. Well, they go back and must have sleptwalked into this one because they beat the 307th ranked Ken Palm team, Western Michigan, 63-59. Boo Booey goes for 21, 3, and 5. Barnheiser goes for 27 and 3. So 2 obviously bona fide good players over there, but they were outscored in the second half, and this game was tied with 4 minutes on the clock.
Yeah, it's questioning what's going on in Evanston. Love the Town was just there this weekend, but it's that raises some concerns if you ask me. I know Boo Booey has been there for 19 years, but I don't know. I don't know how I feel about them this year, honestly. I think they might be on the way to the bottom of the Big Ten.
Rutgers defeats the 185th ranked Ken Palm team Georgetown 71-60. 3 Scarlet Knights get into double figures, and they win despite losing the rebounding battle by 11. So Steve Peichel finally gets maybe the season going a little bit over there after a tough start.
Yeah. Is Ewing still coaching?
I believe he got canned.
Well, no, that's good. Good for Rutgers. It's a quality win. Tough to win when you're out-rebounded by that margin, but pulled it off, and excited to see, what goes on with them. I think we visit the Rack this year, I believe. So
I hope so. I love winning at the Rack.
So.
I love winning at the Rack. It's not hard.
No, good for them. Always good to see a Big Ten team win a non-con game. So I don't know. Pretty up in the air as far as Big Ten non-con goes, if you ask me. A little weak, but not the end of the world.
Rutgers, prior had lost to Princeton. Interesting of note, I don't have the score in front of me. Shame on me for not writing it down. But Princeton goes ahead and beats a future opponent, ours, Duquesne. So an interesting little development there. Duquesne, unfortunately for our strength of schedule, loses prior to coming into Lincoln. But, I for one, did not see that coming.
Maybe Princeton's a little bit better than people thought. Those Ivy League schools are tough, man, because they get people stick around for 4 years, and they just find – it always seems like there's a guy that can shoot on those teams. I don't know how it works, but they stick around. They play good team ball, and I don't think that's something to be necessarily too ashamed of. We'll see now Princeton have a terrible rest of the year, and I'll eat my words.
That's usually how it works.
That's
right?
fine. So.
Although I will note, Princeton last year, I think they won a game in the tournament.
They did.
So
I believe.
I don't remember.
I do believe they might have been a minor Cinderella there. So. Yeah. No, good for them though. Good, love to see that happen. So
good win for those guys. Big Ten again, starting off on a relatively weak slate. Rutgers kind of leading the charge. Northwestern gets a couple wins. Purdue, obviously, again the class of the Big Ten, but the rest of the Big Ten, I think it's really up in the air, Mike.
It really is. I think nothing's been super solidified except for maybe Purdue being the team. So excited to see what the Huskers can do. I know we got a handful of games left here in the non-con, but we'll get into conference play here and see what the Huskers can do. Yeah.
I think that about wraps up for this episode. You can follow all of our social media, Scarlet Shoot Pod, on Twitter, on Instagram, on pretty much everywhere you can find it. We're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, so make sure you follow the show. Don't miss a notification anytime that we release something. We try to get an episode out semi-weekly, 2 episodes a week if possible. It always depends on the schedule, so make sure you keep your eyes peeled for anything that may drop. I always live tweet the games. Me and Mike share that responsibility. So make sure you follow us on Scarlet Shoot Pod on Twitter for live game updates and any kind of injury updates and roster adjustments that may happen throughout the season. So with that being said, my name is Blake with co-host Mike. And for the both of us, go Big Red.
Go Big Red, baby.